At issue this week, Supreme decisions. 2 rulings, one from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, one from the U.S. Supreme Court. The Pennsylvania ruling impacts so-called skill game machines, saying they're slot machines that need to abide by gambling laws. A local business owner tells me how it could affect his bottom line. And the U.S. Supreme Court dealing a blow to a federal law that bars users of illegal drugs from possessing firearms. We have analysis from a criminal defense attorney.
NBC10 At Issue starts now.
I'm Lauren Mayk. Welcome to NBC10 At Issue. A recent ruling from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court could affect Philadelphia neighborhoods and local business owners. The ruling involved the future of so-called skill games, and it's leading the mayor to draw a line about where she thinks those games should and shouldn't be.
You don't want to see slot machines being allowed to legally function near schools, in convenience stores, in neighborhoods across the city. Do I have your perspective correct?
The games have been part of budget talks for years in Harrisburg as a potential source of revenue. And this week, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled the games are slot machines under Pennsylvania law, paving the way for them to be regulated and taxed.
And do I think they should be taxed as your mayor? Absolutely. But this is where I don't think that they belong, and I will never support them being. Number one, they shouldn't be on our neighborhood commercial corridors or in neighborhoods in convenience stores. They shouldn't.
Previewing the legislative debate ahead, Mayor Parker said the city should not have to accept them everywhere in order to get funding for things like schools and transit.
That's a false choice. We shouldn't have to make it.
She did say she's okay with the machines in casinos and private clubs like VFWs. I visited a bar in Bridesburg that has some of these machines to get a small business owner's perspective. It's called My Brother's Irish Pub, and the owner is John Coughlin.
You know, there's been a lot of talk and some controversy about these skill games. You've got a few of them here. When did you put them in?
They followed about a year after I got into the business.
He says his first year in business was when the Eagles first won the Super Bowl. A pretty good time to be a bar in Philly, but it's not always that good.
These came out, they were like, they did good for the bars. They actually helped revenue, get some business, you know.
Is that why you put them in, because they help business?
Yes, 100%. They actually helped me out a lot, you know, getting through. I mean, your liquor liability's up, insurances are up, everything's up. And these offset, you know, they offset revenue, you know.
Do you have any idea how much? Have you crunched those numbers to see what the financial impact for you is?
No, I really when I get out of here, it goes right back into the business. It really does. It goes, pays a bill, and you ain't getting rich on it, but it takes care of the little revenue, you know. It's just people come out, people play them, they don't play them, you know. It's just hit and miss it like anything else, you know.
So when the bar is open, how often are these machines busy?
You might get 2 or 3 hours where people come in to play steady, but it ain't all the time. It's during the day, they're dead as a door, but people come out at night, people want to come over, put a couple bucks in, they put a couple bucks in. You know, some days you're down, other days you're up. You ain't, like I said, you ain't getting rich, but they do bring some revenue in, you know?
So when you look at the court decision that just happened and now the decisions that lawmakers are making in Harrisburg, how do you want it to be handled?
You're going to have to come to some kind of agreement somehow. I don't know. I just know that they're sitting behind it. I wish they would come out and see how it really affects the bar business instead of, you know, making a decision behind desks, how it helps the little guy, you know. We're a little guy with little business, so it's tough. I'm not an expert in that. The governor, I mean, I just know the governor, they're going to do what they want to do, you know. And I just don't, you know, they reversed decision. So this has been going on for a while, you know.
Do you think you're going to be able to keep them in here?
I don't know. I really don't know. I just don't have the answer to that.
If they're regulated and taxed, are you okay with that?
Have to be. You have to take what you get. You know, if you take it down to crumbs, you still need that. You know, people need to enjoy, come out, not just sit in the bar. They want to come over and enjoy. Yeah, the people that like playing them was like tic-tac-toe for them or something. They like it, and other people stay away from it. You got people come in that don't even think about gambling, but it's a little bit of something. I got the lottery here. I have a little bit of everything to keep. The lottery helps a bill. This helps a bill. It's just you can't make it just on beer and shots here. You know?
The mayor has recently talked about this. I don't know if you've seen her comments, but she has said she's okay with them, with these machines in casinos. She's okay with them in private clubs, but she is concerned about them in neighborhood stores and in particular in lower income parts of the city. What do you think of that perspective?
It's tough. Everything, lower income gets everything in the city. So I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know. I just think you have to be 21 to sit in my bar to play the machines or something. I don't know outside the world, but I know that because we have a liquor license that I have to pay a lot for. I want to make sure that protect that and protect this. You know, I mean, it helps me out. That's about as much as I know.
There are 3 machines to play here, plus a machine that dispenses winnings.
Do you play them at all?
No, I used to. I stopped 4 years ago.
Why'd you stop?
I just made a promise to myself that I wouldn't play them now because it interferes with my business, you know. Gambling, I tried not gambling no more. So I gambled on buying a bar, so it's enough work there.
Skill games company Pace-O-Matic responded to the court ruling saying, quote, "We are disappointed with the decision by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and strongly believe it does not accurately reflect the facts presented, notably the same facts that led to a string of lower court rulings affirming the legality of our skill games, including a unanimous Commonwealth Court ruling," end quote. The company said small businesses and clubs could face the choice of not operating them and losing revenue or facing, quote, crippling taxation. The governor was asked about the court ruling.
I think we all knew that we needed to do something to both regulate and tax skill games.
His proposed budget included $2 billion in potential revenue from regulating and taxing skill games. He encouraged the Republican Senate leadership to work with Democrats on something that can pass and get to his desk. Supreme ruling. The nation's highest court hands down a decision involving guns and drugs. A criminal defense attorney joins us next to tell us what it means now and potentially in the future.
This is NBC10 At Issue.
We're back now on NBC10 At Issue with analysis of a new ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court. On Thursday, the court barred the government from restricting the gun rights of casual drug users. The case involved a Texas man who occasionally consumed marijuana. The law makes it a crime for any person who is an unlawful user of or addicted to any controlled substance to possess a firearm. Now, it is the same statute that Hunter Biden, the son of former President Joe Biden, was convicted under in June of 2024 before his father pardoned him. And joining us now to discuss this further is NBC 10 legal analyst Enrique L1 Latoyson. He is a criminal defense attorney. Welcome. Great to see you again, Enrique.
Thank you.
So let's dig right into this. How could this decision change things, and what kinds of cases would be affected?
So this is a huge ruling. It does change things. It changes the burden on the prosecution from the federal government, but it also doesn't change a lot of things. Let's take the Hunter Biden case, for example. Everyone knows his case. Of course, he was pardoned, so technically he's no longer guilty of those charges, but he was facing 3 of those charges. 2 of those charges, it would not change anything in this case. 1 of those charges, it would. So 2 of the charges, which is lying on a gun application or saying that you're not a drug user on a gun application, the Supreme Court did not change anything in reference to that. That is still the law today. That still stands. 1 of the charges that he was convicted of was a person that is a known drug user having possession of a firearm. This is what changes today. What changed before was in the past, if you were a drug user of a controlled substance and it was illegal, not prescribed, you were automatically, in that case, guilty of possessing a firearm as a known drug user. Now what the law says, just because someone is a known drug user and they're in possession of a firearm, the prosecution must go 1 step further and prove that this person also is dangerous. And it's a combination of being a drug user and being dangerous. This was never the test before. So as of today, this is now the test. So it does change things, but it doesn't change everything.
So what does this mean then for the investigation of these cases, for building these cases, in terms of the evidence and information that law enforcement and prosecutors would have to have?
So in the past, it was very simple. If you could just show that the person was using illegal drugs and it wasn't prescribed, and this was a controlled substance, easy win for the prosecution. Person has a gun, person using drugs, guilty. Now the Supreme Court has said that's not enough. You have to show that the person is possession of a firearm and that the drugs that they're using is making them dangerous. So maybe a particular person uses a particular drug all the time and they're not dangerous and they're just a person that's a functional user. The prosecution has to put the two together, has to be possession of a firearm, using a controlled substance, and has to be dangerous. That's what's changing today. They're going to have to go back and look at all their open cases that they have on this particular statute, and they're going to have to see whether or not they have evidence to show that this person is dangerous along with those other 2 points.
Could you see cases that had already been finished and prosecutions were finished and sentences were given out? Could people come back and say, wait a minute, I want another look at this?
Absolutely. I mean, the law is deemed to be unconstitutional, and it's deemed to be basically overbroad and too simple. The Supreme Court basically said that, persons' right to bear firearms underneath the Second Amendment cannot just be taken away when you can't have a nexus between the person having a firearm, using drugs, and not showing that they're a dangerous individual. So in this particular case, when you look at these particular facts, it's narrow, but it has absolutely a huge effect on the usual person. So now, it doesn't say that anybody using drugs can just have a firearm. It says the prosecution must show that this person using the drugs is making them dangerous. I still believe that there'll be certain types of drugs that the prosecution can easily make this case out. And I believe it's probably for marijuana going to be a harder haul and a harder test for the prosecution to make out.
And Justice Gorsuch, in this opinion, drew a distinction, saying that it didn't apply to addicts or people who are currently intoxicated. What's the significance of that and drawing that distinction?
So the history of why that particular law exists deals with habitual drunkards. It dealt with in the past of why this law was actually instituted. It was for the idea of someone being intoxicated and not allowed to have a gun. And so that's kind of the history. And when you deal with the laws of the Supreme Court, they go back and tell you why this law actually existed and why we have it. But they're saying today, in today's times, that you have to make that connection. It can't just be this person smokes marijuana on a regular basis, therefore they can't have a gun. They're saying that the Second Amendment rights for that person to bear a firearm is too important over the fact that the government, just saying that they smoke marijuana, so therefore they can't have a gun. They're saying that you've got to do more. The prosecution has to do more. They have to make a connection. They have to show, to successfully prosecute someone, they have to show instances of danger or show that the person is dangerous. Then you don't have a right underneath your Second Amendment right to have a firearm.
As states across the country make decisions about marijuana laws and what's legal and what's not legal, is this the kind of case that you think will be considered or just have a role to play in some of those decisions?
Yeah, so this is where it gets interesting. Mostly people are prosecuted on purchasing firearms and lying on a gun application. And that's what Hunter Biden, 2 of his charges he was convicted of. So this is where it gets interesting, because the reason why the question is asked whether or not you're a known drug user is because there hasn't ever been an element of a known drug user that's dangerous. So this question is asked on the gun application. So as anyone listening to this broadcast go, if they're a known drug user or they use marijuana or use any kind of drug and they go apply for a gun, you can't lie on the application. You still have to say, yes, I'm a known drug user, or yes, I use drugs and stuff like that. So I think in the future, there's going to be a challenge to that question on the gun application. Why are you asking whether or not I use drugs? I think that challenge is coming down the road. I think that question is going to be turned into something else, or it's going to be eliminated. I think the question might be enhanced to say, do you use drugs or do you use certain types of drugs? Certain types of drugs is going to be a lot easier for the government to make out the person is dangerous. And maybe, that actual question will go away, because at some point someone's going to say this question is unconstitutional. You're asking me these questions and it doesn't matter. It only matters whether or not I'm dangerous and I use these drugs. So I think the future of purchasing firearms is going to change based on this case.
Interesting. More to watch on this. Enrique Latoyson, great to see you. Thanks for your perspective.
Thank you.
Democrats' direction. The Philadelphia Democratic Party picks a path forward when it comes to their leadership. The choice they made that brings back a longtime leader, but also opens the door to the future.
This is NBC10 At Issue.
There's been a lot of talk recently about the future of the Philadelphia Democratic Party, who should run it and what it would look like. Well, this week, leaders representing wards in neighborhoods across the city gathered at the Philadelphia Democratic headquarters. They re-elected longtime chairman Bob Brady for another 4-year term. The city's district attorney had suggested Brady step aside after 40 years at the helm, but he's not going anywhere. I spoke to him right after the vote.
What do you think will convince people? Because, there are still people who say, all right, well, it's talk. You're going to say that you're going to listen to people. You're going to say that you're going to bring in some of the more progressive voices and the Working Families Party folks. Are you really going to do it? What do you think? What do you think you need to do to convince them that it's not just talk?
I don't need to convince them. I need to tell them anything they need to call me and come and see me. And they do, and they have. In this last couple of weeks, I have all of them come in. We talked to all of them, and they know that my heart's in the right place. I want to go in the right direction, and it might be the direction that they want to go. We're all together. You talk about labels, the only label I care about, everyone have the same label, Democrat.
After that meeting in the still busy lobby, I also talked to Will Gross, the ward leader for the 2nd Ward in South Philadelphia.
There's been a lot of talk about where the direction of the party should go. After the election here tonight, tell me how you're feeling about it.
I'm feeling good. There's a lot of new voices in the room, and there's a lot of voices that have been around that are open to hearing from the new folks, and I think that that's a very good sign. I think it's a sign that we're going to move forward as a group. And there are a lot of new ideas that I think should be shared, and I have a lot of hope that those ideas will be heard and will be addressed, because we have a lot of huge elections coming up, not just this year, but in 28. So I'm feeling pretty good coming out of the room, I will say, yeah.
We saw, success from Representative Rabb in the 3rd district.
That's true.
And some strength from progressives in this city. How would you describe the environment right now and the strength that they do have right now in Philadelphia?
I think that folks are hurting. I think the working class is hurting. I think that immigrant communities are hurting. And I think that the Democratic Party can be the party that works towards addressing some of those issues, whether it's affordability or if it's ICE in your neighborhood, whatever it might be. I think that this is the party that needs to be the one that's addressing these issues head on, not watering down how we do that, and being there for working people.
A couple days later, back at party headquarters, I caught up with Sharon Vaughn. She was elected as the new first vice chair of the party, right under Brady's role as chair. And when you talk about the future of the party, she could play a big role in that.
Chairman Brady is having another term ahead of him. He had told me that he believed that it would be his last term, and then when I talked to him the other day, he wasn't so sure if that would be the case.
Yeah.
But where do you see your role going? Because certainly he has talked about grooming someone to take his place. Do you think that will be you?
I certainly do.
And why do you want that role?
I want to continue to make a difference in Philadelphia. As you know, I have spent 40 years in politics. I got involved with Wilson Good's campaign for him to become the first black mayor. And his wife and I used to work together at the University of Pennsylvania Veterinary School. And when I found out this man had an opportunity to run Philadelphia, I jumped in all fours and I helped him become the winner. And that is where I learned my passion for politics. I know that I make a difference, Lauren. I know that people respect me. I know that I help those that contact me for any type of service that they need. And I believe that I have enough energy left to apply to this party, to give to this organization, and make sure that we get back the popularity or the understanding that we've had in the past. I believe that, respect is earned, and I'm going to work hard at getting the respect back from the citizens of Philadelphia.
For much more on the decision local Democrats are making about their leadership and the future direction of their party, check out my Battleground Politics podcast. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be right back.
This is NBC10 At Issue.
This past week, some local students got a chance to experience firsthand what it would be like to serve in city government. Dozens of students spent a full day at City Hall for a youth summit. The students are all participants in the WISE Youth and Government program. The day included a mock city council meeting where they debated mock legislation. Mayor Sherelle Parker says these students are, quote, helping shape the future of our city right now.
Thank you, Arthur.
That does it for this edition of NBC10 At Issue. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.